My name is Lavanya, lecturer in English, Girraj Government College, Nizamabad. So today's my topic is direct and indirect speech. So for the second year students, for the third sem students, so the direct and the indirect speech. So what are the direct and indirect speeches? Right? What are the direct and indirect speeches? What is the differences between the direct and the indirect speeches? What is the differences between the direct speech and also the indirect speech? So now we are going to learn about that the direct and the indirect speeches. So what is the differences between the direct and the indirect speeches? Yes. So now we are going to see now. So from the school stage, you are learning what you call the direct and the indirect speech. Right? What is the direct and what is the indirect speech? You are learning from your school basic itself, from the 10th class itself, right? So as it is topic, nothing is different from that. So the same topic that is in your degree second year also. So some more details, okay? So once again we have to recollect or remember that. So you have to recollect or you have to remember the once again. So we have to see that, right? So come to the topic, direct speech and the indirect speech, right? So reporting speech. There are two ways of reporting what somebody says: direct speech and also the indirect speech or reported speech. So actually the reported speech is divided into two types, right? Reported speech is divided into two types. So that is one is the direct speech and another one is the indirect speech or the reported speech, right? So what is the differences between the direct speech and the indirect speech, right? So now we are going to see about the direct speech. So direct speech. In direct speech, we use the speaker's own words, right? What is the direct speech means? We use the speaker's own words in the direct speech. Suppose example, I have a pen. This is my pen, sorry. This is my pen. So here directly the speaker is using that. Directly the speaker is telling that, yeah, this is my pen. Right? So in the text we put speech marks around the words spokenly. Speech marks are also called inverted commas. So in the direct speech also, another rule. So you have to follow the rules and regulations. With the rules and regulations itself, you have to follow the direct speech and also the indirect speech. Some rules are there to follow the direct speech and also the indirect speech. So in the direct speech, what are the rules, right? In text, right? In text, we put speech marks around the words spoken, right? And speech marks are also called inverted commas. So in the direct speech, when you take an example or when you take a sentences, so you have to keep the direct speech which starts with the inverted commas, right? Compulsory inverted commas in the direct speech. Next, come to the indirect speech. Indirect speech, sometimes called reported speech also. We do not use the exact words of the speaker, right? Instead of we report what was said, we sometimes need to change pronouns and verb tenses. We don't use speech marks. I am going home, right? Helen said she was going home. I am going home. So here, what is the indirect speech, Indirect speech sometimes called as the reported speech, and we do not use the exact words of the speaker in the indirect speech. We can't use, we don't use the direct words of the speakers. We will use the indirectly. We will tell the indirectly the speaker's words, right? Suppose example here also, we need to change the pronouns and also the verb tenses. Right? What are the pronouns? Nouns are instead of the pronouns. Means instead of name, he, she, then, them, that. So these all words comes under the pronouns, right? So here you have to change the pronouns and also you have to change the verb tenses. right? We don't use the speech marks. What is the speech mark? Inverted commas. We don't use the inverted commas in the indirect speech. We will use the inverted commas in the direct speech, but we don't use the inverted commas in the indirect speech, right? So here, suppose example, I am going home. So this is the direct speaker's words, right? So that we are hearing that I am going home is the direct speaker words. So when you convert it into the indirect speech, so then it becomes. So how it becomes? See here, Helen said she was going home. Helen said she was going home. So here it is the indirectly. You are telling the indirectly, and you are removed the inverted commas also. Right, inverted commas also. And what is the speaker speaking or spoken? Sorry, ma. What is the speaker spoken? That is not directly you are speaking in the indirect speech. Yes? Yeah. So here also some rules, ma. You have to follow some rules. So what are the rules? Now we are going to see now. Punctuating the direct speech. Right? How to punctuate the direct speech? Yes, when using direct speech in your writing, you need to use the correct punctuation, right? So in the direct speech, there are a lot of punctuations you have to use. So you have to use correctly, right? You have to use the perfectly the punctuation words. So first one, the exact words spoken must be enclosed in speech marks. The exact words spoken must be enclosed in the speech marks. Speech marks are nothing but speech marks are nothing but inverted commas, right? So the exact words spoken. What is the speaker is speaking? So that exact word you have to keep in the inverted commas. You have to close in the inverted commas. Yes. Yeah. So the first word of the speech must begin with a capital letter. Yes. The first word of the speech, first word of the letter, whatever it may be, you are starting. So that must be with a capital letter. Yes, ma'am. Right. And the third one is the words in the speech marks must be. The words in the speech marks must be separated from the rest of the sentences by a comma, right? Separated from the rest of the sentences by a comma. So in the indirect speech, when you take the words, so when you have to separate them, so when you have to show them separately, so then you have to keep the comma. You have to separate with the giving the comma, and then you can separate the the sentences, right? The words in the speech marks must be separated from the rest of the sentences by a comma. Yes. Next one, you must use a new line. You must use a new line. When a new speaker begins to speak, you must use a new line when a new speaker begins to speak. Yes. So punctuating the direct speech is, you have to follow compulsory, ma'am. So you have to follow compulsory the rule of the punctuations in the direct speech. So most probably the punctuations we are going to use in the direct speech itself, ma'am. There is no punctuations in the indirect speech. Maybe not most probably. So something exclamatory marks or the question marks. So these type of marks punctuations we will use in the indirect speech. But in the direct speech, commas, full stops, inverted commas, exclamatory marks, question marks, all the punctuations we will use in the direct speech. So how to use? So there is a rule to use the direct speech, the punctuation, right? So when using the direct speech in your writing, you need to use the correct punctuation. Yes, the exact word, first one, the exact word spoken must be enclosed in speech marks. And the second one, the first word of the speech. The first word of the speech must begin with a capital letter compulsory. Remember this main point. The words in the speech marks must be separated from the rest of the sentences by a comma. Next one, you must use a new line. You must use a new line when a new speaker begins to speak, right? Yeah, last point also very important, mother. You must use a new line. I mean, you must start the new. Don't continue in that. When you have no right to continue in the same means, the new speaker. When the new speaker enters, when the new speaker begins speaking, right? So then you have to separate and you have to write in the new line, not to continue in the same as it is line mark. Yes? Yeah. So next one is the using speech in your writing. Right? Using the direct or indirect speech in your writing. So what? So, using speech in fiction and non-fiction writing adds variety. Yes, using speech in fiction and non-fiction writing adds some variety. However, writing out long pieces of direct speech can make you writing confusion. Yes, so writing out the long pieces of direct speeches, so that long the sentences, long conversation, so that can make your writing confusion. Yes, it also slows down the action. Not only the confusion, and also it slows down the action. Whatever the action you are going to show in you are going to see in the direct speech, so that action also becomes slow. And also that when you prolong, right, when you make, right, the pieces of the direct speeches, so then it becomes little bit confusion, and then it gives the action of slow down action, right? So reported speech, nothing but the indirect speech, right? So reported speech can summarize when the speaker has said, so that the action moves along more quickly, right? Reported speech can summarize what the speaker has said, so that the action moves along more quickly. So in the indirect speech, in the reported speech, what is that means? That summarizes. Right? What summarizes, the speaker has said something that is in the action and moves very quickly. That action moves very quickly because here the third person will enter. Right? The direct speech will end with the one speaker or the two speakers, but in the indirect speech, the third speaker will be entered, and then the third speaker is going to talk about the first person and also the second person. Right? So then the action moves quickly. Quickly in the reported speech, nothing but indirect speech. Reported speech is useful. Reported speech is useful when you want a contrast. When you want a contrast between what a character says and what he or she is thinking. Right? What is the reported speech? Reported speech is useful. How the reported speech is useful? How the indirect speech is useful? So here, when you want a contrast between the character, what the character says and what he or she is thinking, so that is called the contrasting, right? So the link between the two, right, sentences, so that comes under the indirect speeches, that comes under the reported speeches. Suppose example here, Lady Macbeth, right? So the Lady Macbeth, the lady is the character, right? And also the Macbeth is the what she's thinking, that Lady Macbeth example. Yes? Yeah. So now come to the advantages and disadvantages of each type of speeches. Advantages and disadvantages of each type of direct speech and also the indirect speech, right? So now we are going to see here what is the advantages and what are the disadvantages in the direct speech and also the indirect speech. Yeah. So the direct speech can show what a character is like. So the direct speech can show what a character is like, but when you come to the indirect speech, can be summarized briefly so that it does not slow down the take back of the action, right? And the next one, long speeches can be boring, right? Long speeches can be boring, right? Because it can't understand, ma'am. And we can't follow the punctuations, where the punctuations are there, where we have to remove, where we have to keep, and what the punctuation we have to keep, right? Little bit confusion. So that are the very boring long speeches, right? And it can show a contrast between what a character is and saying and what he or she is thinking. Too many speakers can confuse the reader. Yes. So here too many speakers can confuse the reader. So too many speakers are there, too many speakers they are speaking, so then the reader, what he is reading, he or she is reading, or what he or she is understanding. So it's confusion, right? Confusion between the speaker and the reader. Yes, in the direct speech. Direct speech can add variety to writing. Yes, direct speech can add the varieties to the writing, because inverted commas or closed inverted commas or exclamatory marks, question marks, and also the very interesting, right? The add the variety to the writing. Yes, yeah. So next here, summary, sorry. In your writing, some points I have written here, so briefly to get an idea, right? In your writing, use mainly reported speech. Use direct speech only to emphasize the main points your character makes. Yes? In your writing, use mainly reported speech. Use mainly reported speech. Use direct speech only to emphasize the main points your characters make. Next point, don't bore and confuse your readers by writing out long conversation between your characters. Yes. So the second point, remember that don't bore or don't confuse the reader, right, by writing out long characters or long conversation between your characters. Right? And the third point, direct speech should be used sparkingly. Direct speech should be used sparingly, right? Yeah. And the last point, it is most effective. It is most effective when only the most forceful statement are put into the direct speech. As it is more effective when it is more effective, the most forceful statements are put into direct speech. Yes, the most the most forcible writers or the speakers are put in the direct speech. So that is comes under the direct speeches. Yes. So yeah. My name is Lavanya, lecturer in English, Girraj Government College, Nizamabad. So the direct and indirect speech, I am going to repeat once again, direct and indirect speech. Yeah. So what is the direct speech and the indirect speech? What is the differences between the direct speech and the indirect speech? Yes. So direct speech and the indirect speech are called the reporting speeches. Reporting speeches are divided into two types. There are two ways of reporting speeches. What somebody says, direct speech and the indirect speech. Yes. So now we are going to see the direct speech, ma. Nothing but indirect speech. We use the speaker's own words, ma. So we will not add the words in the in the direct speech, or we will not remove, or we will not add the new words. What the speaker speaks directly. Keep calm. Right? The teacher said to the students that keep calm, be silent. So the teacher is directly, she or he is saying directly to the students that keep quiet or keep silent. So in the direct speech, right? The teacher and the students. The teacher is saying directly to the students. But when you convert into the indirect speech, right? When you convert it into the indirect speech, that teacher said that the students to be quiet or to be silent. So here the third person will enter into the the sentences, ma. The speaker, whoever is there, the third person will enter, and the third person will talk about the first person and the second person. So here teacher is saying to the students that keep calm or keep silence, right? The two persons, first person and the second person, right? Directly. That words are directly listening by the students. So that is a direct speech. And also in the direct speech, ma'am, inverted commas. Direct speech is closed and also opened with the indirect. Sorry, ma'am. Closed and opened with the inverted commas, and also the commas, and also the full stops, and also the exclamatory marks, and also the question marks, right? So the punctuations, nothing but punctuations. Punctuating, we will punctuate the direct speeches. We will punctuate the direct speeches. When it is converted into the indirect speech, the sentences, so then there is no using of the inverted commas, there is no using of the comma, there is no using of the full stop, right? Yeah. So we will remove all the punctuations, and then we will write. We will give in the indirect speech. Yes? Yeah. So indirect speech, sometimes called the reported speeches also. We do not use the exact words of the speakers. I already told that we do not use the exact words of the speakers, right? Suppose the Gopu said, the bell has been ringing. Gopu said, the bell has been ringing. So it comes under the direct speech. Gopu said, the bell has been ringing. So when it is converted into the indirect speech, there is no comma, there is no inverted commas. Gopu said that the bell had been ringing. Has been ringing, had been ringing. Yes. So the third person, the another person will enter, and we will not speak to the directly to the speaker, to the person, to the person to person, right? We will speak indirectly. We will tell indirectly that Gopu said that the bell had been ringing, has been ringing, had been ringing. Yes, yes. So this type of sentences, or this type of the sentences that comes under the direct speech and also the indirect speech. So Tara said, suppose the next example, Tara said, it is time to leave for the meeting. Tara said, it is time for the time to leave the meeting. Yes. So nothing but the teacher said, I am reading a novel now. The teacher said, I am reading a novel now, right? So the directly she is saying that, yeah, I am reading a novel now, right? So when you rewrite into the rewrite into the indirect speech, the teacher said that he or she was reading a novel then, right? Yeah. So next one, I can't agree with you, she told him. She told him that she could not agree with him. Yes, so lot of more. Do come in, John, Gautam said. Gautam welcomed me saying, do come in. So that the indirectly, right, it changes into the indirectly. Yeah. So here the punctuations, indirect speeches, yeah, instead we report what was said. We sometimes need to change the pronouns and also the verb tenses. So in the indirect speech, we changes. In the indirect speeches, we changes the pronouns and also the verb tenses. We don't use the speech marks, means inverted commas. We don't use the inverted commas. Suppose I have written the example here, I am going home. It is in the direct speech. Yeah, I am going home. Yes. So here when it is converted into the indirect speech, Helen said she was going home. Helen said she was going home. I am going home. She was going home. Right. So the indirectly, right? The speaker has spoken. So we are taking that word and then we are speaking. Right. We are involving in that. We are taking a part in that and then we are speaking. So that comes under the indirect speech. So again, sorry so the main part is that you have to follow the rules and regulations in the direct and indirect speech. Some rules and regulations are there in the direct and the indirect speeches. So first rule is the punctuation. Punctuating. I already told in the starting itself that punctuations are mostly used in the direct speech. So you have to follow compulsory the punctuations. Yeah. So come first one. When using direct speech in your writing, you need to use the correct punctuation. Right? You are writing. You need to use the correct punctuation. Yeah. So the next one, the exact words spoken must be enclosed in the speech marks, nothing but the inverted commas. The exact words. What are the exact words? Suppose come here. Come here. So the exact words come here. So that exact words you have to keep in the inverted commas. Yes, inverted commas. Yeah. So the next one, the first word of the speech. The first word of the speech must begin with a capital letter. Remember, this is very important. First of all, whatever you start, with any word, any alphabet, right? So that must be, that must be in the capital letter compulsory. Yes? Yeah. The words in speech marks must be separated from the rest of the sentences by a comma. When you have to separate the words, when you have to give the separately the words, so then you have to compulsory you have to be separate with by giving a comma. Yes. And you must use a new line when a new speaker begins to speak. Right? You must use a new line when a new speaker begins to speak. Yes. So next one, using speech in your writing. How to use? What you have to use in your writing when you are writing the direct speech or the indirect speech, some sentences, whatever it may be. So what the speech you have to use. Yes. Using speech in fiction and non-fiction writing adds variety. Using speech in fiction and non-fiction writing adds variety. However, writing out long pieces of direct speech can make your writing confusion. However, writing out long pieces of direct speech can make your writing confusion. It also slows down the action. Reported speech. Nothing but indirect speech can summarize what the speaker has said so that the action moves along more quickly. Reported speech can summarize. Reported speech can summarize what the speaker has said so that the action moves along more quickly. Reported speech is useful. Reported speech is useful when you want a contrast between what a character says and what he or she is thinking. Yeah. So advantages and the disadvantages between the direct and the indirect speeches. So direct speech can show what a character is like, and long speeches can be boring. Right? Too many speakers can confuse the reader. Direct speech can add variety to writing. These are the advantages and also the disadvantages. What is advantage? Direct speech can show what a character is like. This is the advantage. Yes. Long speeches can be boring. Disadvantage. Too many speakers can confuse the reader. Disadvantage. Direct speech can add variety to writing. Advantage. Yes. Idea. Indirect speech can be summarized briefly so that it does not slow down the pace of the actions. Advantage. Yes. So it is in the advantage. Next one, it can show a contrast between what a character is saying and what he or she is thinking. Advantage. So see ma, in the direct speech there are disadvantages and also the advantages, but in the indirect speech most probably there are only the advantages. Yes? Yeah. Next. So some points I have summarized for you. So see here. First point, in your writing. First point, in your writing, use mainly reported speech. Right? Use direct speech only to emphasize the main points your characters make. Don't bore and confuse your readers by writing out long conversation between your characters. Yes. And next one, direct speech should be used sparkingly. Direct speech can be used sparkingly. And next one, it is most effective when only the most forceful statements are put into direct speech. Right? It is most effective when only the most forceful statements are put into the direct speeches. Right? So these are the 4 main points I have written for you because for understanding. So read this, and this is the end of the direct and the indirect speech. Yes. So I am ending. Thank you very much.